Welcome to the ROM and welcome, Barbara.
Hello.
I'm going to give a brief introduction and then have a bit of a back and forth with Barbara with her amazing slides.
Please speak into the microphone.
Yes, and please remind me if I flail it around. So Barbara Clunder, as Valerie said, is one of the leading artists in Toronto. My curatorial work at the ROM is recovering past histories related to the history of the collection of global textiles and fashion. And to do this, I rely upon collaboration with colleagues, their scholarly works, and certainly librarians who are so helpful with accessing materials and are really some of my best friends in research. The result is new versions of histories that leaves many as yet unanswered questions. So when I have the opportunity to speak to a living artist, a living maker, a living wearer, I really relish it. And talking to them and learning about their experiences exponentially expands the historic record. So as a Canadian design historian, I spent hours trying to capture this ephemeral history created by creative spirits such as Barbara. And there are so few records of small business histories they all get lost, and that make up the fabric of our nation. We're really a nation of very small businesses. So gathering these micro-histories from makers, wearers, producers, by listening, by asking questions, produces a macro history of design and a social history, particularly of Toronto. And then all these jigsaw pieces tend to link up finally over the years, and it's really marvelous. So the interviews result in previously unrecorded names of makers, of shops, of locations, of emotions, of events, and physical and the social landscape of the city and its industries. And this information bubbles up about what was important and new at the time, and challenges, what were the challenges, what were the successes, what were the problems. And in 2020, during COVID lockdown, I returned to my ongoing research on Canadian design and began a fascinating email conversation with Bill Grigsby of Reactor, a 30-year plus Toronto design studio who represents artists for leading ad agencies across Canada and the US. And this led me to Barbara Clunder, and also these fascinating histories of the Canadian print world and type. So, and this in turn led to a donation by Barbara Clunder of over 27 pieces and a range of her work. And I'd just like to go through, we're going to talk about the more specific things in the collection and key things that relate to textiles and fashion. But Barbara is such a versatile and prolific artist that you have to get a bigger picture of her work. So the Clunder collection is a snapshot of the vibrant cultural scene in Toronto in the 80s and 90s with music, a theme, a leitmotif through Barbara's work. She draws inspiration from children's books, Lewis Carroll, Winnie the Pooh, Beatrix Potter, Wizard of Oz, artists such as Arthur Rackham, and big histories and mythologies of fairy tales and the big stories that we've carried with us over years, as well as Walt Disney. In 2009, she received the Isherwood Award from the Advertising and Design Club of Canada, and this is like the Oscar in her field. Was a really big deal, and she's worked with the leading art directors around the world. And Bill Grigsby said, Barbara works to make eye contact with her audience. She broke the caption barrier. In the 1970s, the attitude for illustration was that if it relied on words, it was weak, and that was only for cartoons and comic books. But as you'll see, Barbara is very irreverent. She has designed fonts, which to me is one of the most astonishing things. I don't know how anyone designs a font. And she's designed several for Font Stop of Berlin. And again, as Bill said, in graphic art circles, typography is really the apex. And to have a font with your name on it really means something. So congratulations, Barbara. She's an incredibly versatile artist, passionate about the environment, which is a theme through her work. And here you can see her paper cuts, that she has female insects too, which is very important. More paper cuts, her bee jackets, talking about the problem of the bees on the planet. She employs humor to make social commentary, always. Her very, very witty. And, in the spirit of kind of Ogden Nash or Edward Gorey. She does embroidery. Barbara is not afraid of any medium. If it sounds like a good idea and she has one, she'll just do it. She uses all manner of techniques and draws upon them to create these beauty. These are huge embroideries. 4 feet is a very big embroidery. The Bayeux tapestry is an embroidery, and it's kind of in that league. She's passionate about the environment and planet and a big activist, having done lots and lots of pro bono work for very different causes around the city over time. Molly Johnson, Kumbaya AIDS, Greenpeace, Plant a Tree, Africa, eating disorders, she said, you name it. But all these are records, and these are T-shirts that she's given us of what's gone on in Toronto. So 519 is a story of Toronto's LGBTQ community and experience. It was founded in 1975. So all these things have tendrils that resonate out if you want to go look at them. Or the Ashkenazi Festival, which is one of the largest festivals in the world of this kind of music. And she lives on Toronto Island, so she's very close to nature and things that happen. And this was a T-shirt that she gave the ROM and that she made about the encroachment of the airports on the island and in actually our water on Lake Ontario. And now, Barbara, we're going to start talking with you about the bamboo. And as many of you know, maybe some of you don't, the Bamboo was a club. It was a restaurant and a club. And what do you...
A nightclub and a restaurant. And Patty is here, one of the originators. And Richard and Patty found this location. It was an old Chinese laundry. Then it was a wicker world, which might have had something to do with why it's called the Bamboo, but it became one of the most beloved hangouts in the city, the history of Toronto. Every musician has hung out there, worked as a waiter maybe, played at night. It brought in worldwide black music to white Toronto. It was spectacular.
Can you talk about this, these two pieces?
Well, the one on the left is the front door ceramic doormat. And maybe there was something wrong with the cement at the front door, but I remember they needed something, and so you just broke up some dishes and glued them down.
So that was the entrance, and then the other was...
And then we did a series of murals, and this was a sketch for a mural. It didn't turn into one, but it gives you the feeling of that tropical vibe, and basically my job was to suggest, now there's a poster that the ROM bought immediately when that was printed way back in 95, 92. I don't know the dates, but yeah. My challenge was to get across, this is where you go for nighttime fun and learning about black music, which is a vast universe, and this is the place to go. And it turned out to be everybody's favorite place. We miss it terribly.
So it opened in 1983, and at that time, Queen Street West was quite derelict. You really didn't go past university, and it was all considered kind of sketchy. I was in university at that time, and so these were really the edgy parts of Toronto. And of course, this is where the artists moved in the new restaurants, because it was cheap then to be on Queen Street West, right. And now all those places.
That's what artists do, they go where it's... Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so for 20 years, it was a landmark for Toronto, and this was a really interesting time in Toronto's cultural sector where things really changed. And it's artists such as Barbara, the designers Robin Kay, Cucci, all the little shops. The Queen Mother started then, Peter Pan, all these restaurants, some of which still are around. And tell us about the entrance, Barbara.
The entrance, which is on the left there, was a bamboo and a gate that was made out of metal. They did have to close it off. Sometimes the lineups just got too big. The sign I happened to paint it while I was in Vancouver and send it back to Toronto by bus, and it was installed. And there's a picture of Richard, who's one half of the ingenious pair. And
so you
at the
walk down
bottom.
this sort of alley, and then it just opened up behind into
the
a
one
very
with the pink wall
courtyard.
is looking out the gate, and the one on the left is looking in the gate. And that was a patio right off the street. I'm sure all of you have already been to the Bamboo. Yeah. And children were conceived in the bathroom. And the most amazing musical events were there, like Buddy Rich was there and Peter Gabriel, along with all the Jamaican people we had to learn about. White Toronto really needed to know this, and this was the place to go.
So Barbara's really important designs using her own font, if that's what you call it. Can you talk about, say, your Buddy Rich poster?
The brown one in
Yeah.
the corner.
Barbara's graphics were the bamboo. They are the bamboo to this day. Like, these are all her designs. And she kind of...
But the best gig I ever got, that's for sure. 21 years of just party posters. It was fantastic. But when a great musician like Buddy Rich comes, it's like there's money for a poster. And I was in the mood where butcher paper was the thing to try because it was so cheap and dirty. And my goal with the type your job as a poster artist is to grab people's attention for another reason. So like my job for the Bamboo was to get you there for music, and the book cover is to get you to read, or a magazine article is to get you to read that article. So I'm in service of whatever. And music is my favorite thing to be in service to. So my personal challenge when I got the Buddy Rich job to do was, can I get percussion? Can I get the drumming beat? Can I get that into the typeface? And that's what I came up with, was sort of have this vibrating lettering. And he came to the Bamboo, and he was apparently pretty diva, pretty grouchy, pretty a pain in the neck. And but of course his music was amazing. But he did happen to say when he's on stage, "Who the fuck did the poster?" And I sort of went, do, 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 and he goes, "That's the best poster I've ever had." So, and I went, "Oh, it's great." So, but for Afrofest, which was back there, I went to my art books to learn more and more and more about the amazing art coming out of Africa. And then my job was to make it attractive enough for fun. I don't think I would be hired these days because I'm white. And but I had 20 years of being the person that inspired by Africa and tried to make it modern.
And it was a hub for African Canadians, Caribbean community. The
Right.
radio station started. It really was
Reggae was the big
huge hub, and the food.
Well, that's Patty's department, was running the restaurant with Thai cooks that were in town already, but they were encouraged to come over and work for the Bamboo. Vera Khan, and what is the other person's name? Stash, and one other. And anyways, the Bamboo had lineups for the restaurant as much as it did for the music. And we all had our first pad thai probably there. So
And can you talk about the cookbook?
yeah, so then Random House said, how about a cookbook? And at the same time, computers were being introduced as the graphic way to do things. And I'm still no good at the computer, but I had the luxury of sitting down beside one of these new graphic kids, and he said, "What color do you want this page?" And we just hit a button, and the whole page would turn mango or something, and it was so much fun to invent this cookbook.
So this was one of the first digital books.
Yeah, I would say. And then I did illustrations for the different chapters, sort of like for soups and then for party food or something. But I think it was a big seller. I think it would, again, sell big because the food was delicious.
And it looks good. I mean, the book.
Well, see the head coming in on the left-hand side there. If you spread the book out flat, as you know, recipe books are put out kind of flat, she continues on the back, and she's playing what it looks like a banjo, but it's actually a cooking pot. And then the chicken with the guitar runs as those flip books where you can flip the pages and you can see the little cartoon creature change.
Yeah.
So the chicken runs through the whole book, running for his life.
So Barbara started out very young designing and went to OCAD when you were 15, 16?
15.
Yeah.
I
Ontario
was glad to get
College
out of high
Art.
school. High school was hell on earth.
And then she walked across the road and got a job in a
A sign shop. Well, I had to wait for a ride home. I was only 15, so I couldn't drive. And this sign shop was right across the street from OCA, so I just walked back there and I said, "Can I have a job here?" And the guy looks at me like, "How do you know there's a job here? Nothing's advertised." I said, "Well, I don't know, try me out." So he said, "Amazing, you're hired." So I had a part-time job after school. And I had that kind of nerve. I don't know where I got it from. I don't have it now.
And so she started making posters and music, T-shirts. And you talked about the jazz poster, wanting to do a jazz poster.
Well, once the bamboo made me sort of my 15 minutes of fame on Queen Street, other people wanted the same flavor. They wanted to be part of that Queen Street vibe. And the Toronto Jazz Festival called me, and we started doing posters. And we lasted through two donors, sponsors, and 10 years, 10 or 11 years I did those posters.
So
and they don't do them
Jazz
anymore.
Festival started in, I think, 1978 or 1980s. And originally it was sponsored by Du Maurier, the cigarette company. And then there was, as were the fashion shows, there was the Canadian Festival of Fashion. There was so much going on that was all related to this and circling around the bamboo. And when that sponsorship stopped, because there was a new law coming in, it was a big upheaval for a lot of these cultural events to try and find new sponsorship. And finally, TD stepped in. But
it's because smoking was bad. You couldn't smoke at restaurants anymore, which drove the bamboo. Richard, he was so angry about that. But now, we used to put the little calendars for what bands were playing the next month under the ashtray. And there was an ashtray on every table.
Yeah.
That's unheard of now.
So-
Well, then the sponsors of the Jazz Festival had to leave because they were Du Maurier. And
it had
they
been,
picked
and
up.
it was matinee for the fashion. So it was a big upheaval in the cultural industries at this time. And you also did the women's blues reviews for years.
Yeah, I've done them for
So the
34 years.
T-shirts that are in the museum that Barbara did.
And that's an honor. I'm completely honored to do all the music, but the Women's Blues Festival started out as a very small club thing, like a tiny club restaurant on Yonge Street, and now it's in Massey Hall and Roy Thompson Hall, and
coming
it's
up.
an amazing crowd every year.
And
Oh, the Rolling Stones called. That was cool. I got a phone call. I happened to be in this is before cell phones. I happened to be in Vancouver, and I got a phone call that would I like to be in a contest to win the CD cover? And I went, sure. And it was a Thursday, and they said, can you send in about 10 ideas to New York City by Monday?
with no soundtrack to help her.
Yeah, I couldn't have any sound. So, but I went out and bought a bunch of Rolling Stone, I don't know, was it CDs or what was before CDs? And
Records.
tapes.
Cassette tapes.
Gave away 2 jobs and turned the music up and just went crazy for the whole weekend. And the neighbors were pounding on the wall, like, shut up, it was too loud. But I didn't win the CD cover, but I won the T-shirt.
And then this was the concert at the CNE in 1994.
The stage designer won the contest.
And Barbara's also gone on to do hand-hook rugs, which we're going to skip over a little bit, made out of leftovers, but still these are the ones with the music themes that are in the ROM, and was a very successful, part of a very successful exhibition. And sweaters. We have to talk about the sweaters.
This sweater was done for Pierre Trudeau. That's the father of our prime minister. And when I first got that commission phone call, same thing, I went like, oh, let's just put Canada on a sweater. And it just was the ugliest thing you ever saw. So I ripped it all out and decided he would probably like to have a sweater he'd wear skiing. So it went much calmer.
So Barbara's sweaters, we're going to have to accelerate, Barbara.
Okay.
Barbara's sweaters were, she met Marina Sturza in New York. And maybe you just talk and all, does it?
She said, these sweaters are amazing. Would you like to go to Vogue magazine tomorrow? And I said, I'll get some daycare happening. And off we went. And they attached me to Saks Fifth Avenue as soon as they saw the sweaters that afternoon. So all I had to do was knit and go down to New York. And they took care of the paperwork. And I was paid cash. And I kept that up for 2 years. And that was total fun.
The interesting thing about the sweaters is they're sort of 2D graphic designs, but in fact they're very 3D, and every single part is different. So she had an amazing knitter.
Yes, a French-Canadian knitter who will do anything crazy that I can think up. I can see it in my head, but that doesn't mean I can knit it, and she knit it. And those were Zodiac ones based on paper cuts, and that was in my Gwendolyn McEwen show. There's some nice details. Like I'd say, can I have a cuff that goes down to a point? And that's for my cat. Vegetable
And
dye.
finally, for Cucci.
Designing fabrics.
Which was next to the Bamboo on Queen Street.
It was like hand-dipped, wax-resist batik in Bali, those fabrics.
Barbara did these Hawaiian
Theme.
prints.
Adam and Eve
Adam
theme.
and Eve.
Yeah.
And this was a big small Toronto business. And finally, the carpets, which we hope are coming to the museum.
One on the left is 10 feet wide and 7 feet tall, and the other one is a smaller version, a 7x4. The one on the right is woven by Mexican weavers that were unbelievably good. It's almost completely reversible. And the other one is
it's also
hand-hooked.
perfect carpet design because it doesn't matter which way it is in the room. I mean, this is the design part that Barbara's so brilliant at.
Yeah, that's why some of the creatures on the one on the left are upside down, so that if you're on the other side of the room.
You're always on the right side of the room.
And that was the spirit rug, I call it, because all of our myths, whether it's angels or mermaids, they're half human and half nature. So all of our creation myths throughout the history of humans has been involved with nature very closely. And we might want to take more care. Now, I slip-covered a couch last year. The couch was ugly and maroon, and I went, okay, it's got to go white. So I put the Aesop's fables all over it. And that's
what, this is Barbara. We're back in Barbara's house now.
on the island.
Yes. So thank you.
Thank you.